Strange things happening worldwide. End-time events that are happening today. Number 1. Rumors of war. The Bible is a history book, but it is unlike any other history book available in any public library. The history of the Bible starts with the creation of the earth and ends with the end of the world. No other history book has ever been published that covers such a broad range of events on planet Earth. Partially because no one was present at the start to witness and document it, and therefore, no one can write the beginning of our world authoritatively. We are the only people in the whole world who understand how everything will finish. That's special. God didn't share what's going to happen next with his friends just because they wanted to know. He did it so they could get ready for what's coming. This way, they wouldn't be shocked when it happens, and they wouldn't get it wrong. We should be happy that Jesus was so open in telling us what's waiting for us in the future. People often wonder, are we living in the end days? The Bible tells us about the last days, and we've been living in these times for 2,000 years. These days began at Pentecost, a time when an important prophecy about the last days happened. Every person who follows Jesus should always be ready for when he comes back. The Bible is a special book that talks a lot about the future. Out of its many pages, about 1/4 of them make predictions about what's going to happen. From the start to finish, the Bible is like a book that tells us what's coming next, although some parts talk about the future more than others. Out of 735 times, the Bible predicted the future. 596 of those times, things happened just like it said they would. This means 81% of the Bible's predictions have already come true, even though many were made a very long time ago. The Bible has always been spot on with its forecasts. Every single one that should have happened by now did. Most of the ones still pending are about Jesus coming back and what comes after. So, how many forecasts are we waiting on before Jesus comes back? Around 20. We're keeping our eyes peeled for those to unfold before we expect to see Jesus himself. Jesus said to keep watch and to pray. What should we be watching for? Well, we're not supposed to just sit around staring at the sky, waiting for Jesus to show up. That's not what he was getting at. He was saying we should stay alert to what's happening around us and look out for the clues he's given us to get ready. These clues are the signals. Let's flip to Matthew chapter 24, where Jesus' disciples asked him, "What are the clues for knowing when you're about to come back? What should we do if we don't know exactly when that will be?" Jesus didn't beat around the bush. He gave them a straight-up answer. We can be really thankful that he made it so clear. In the Revelation book, he goes into even more detail, but here, he just lays out the key signals that will show he's about to return. The disciples approached Jesus secretly as he was seated on the Mount of Olives. Matthew chapter 24, verses 3 through 8. As Jesus was sitting on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately. "Tell us," they said, "when will this happen, and what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?" Jesus answered, "Watch out that no one deceives you, for many will come in my name claiming, 'I am the Messiah,' and will deceive many. You will hear of wars and rumors of wars, but see to it that you are not alarmed. Such things must happen, but the end is still to come. Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of birth pains." In these verses, Jesus told us about 4 big clues that show us he's coming back. He said one of those clues is already happening, but the other 3 aren't here yet. That's why I think we're at the start of what's called the end times. So, what are these 4 big clues? The first one is about big global troubles, like wars between countries. These things have been happening for a really long time, over 2,000 years. But now, they're happening more often and feel stronger. We're definitely seeing this first clue. There are wars, scary rumors, shaking ground, and hunger. Jesus told us, don't be tricked. He said that many times. The closer we get to the end, the more we have to watch out for being fooled. Even people who go to church can be tricked. He warned us about people who pretend to be heroes or messiahs during these hard times. Some of these fakers have tricked people into following them to the middle of nowhere, and it ended very badly. But there are lots of these false prophets, people who say they can solve all our problems. The more troubles there are, the more of these fakers will show up. But Jesus tells us not to worry. Don't get too upset when we hear about another fight or sad event. He told us something shocking. Even though these events are sad, they're not the end. They're like the hard part before something new and good is born. When we hear about these troubles, it means something new is on the way. This should make us think differently. We know what's going to happen to the world. We shouldn't get too upset or scared, not like other people might. Troubles in the world are like the tough times before something new and good comes. So, we're different. We feel sad for people who are having a hard time, and we try to help, but deep down, we're not scared. We're hopeful. We're looking forward to something new and good coming out of all of this, so we're not down or scared by all the problems. In short, Jesus would tell us not to panic, not to get too worried, but to even rejoice and say, all these things. But the Apostle Peter tells us what we should do while we wait for the end times. In 2 Peter chapter 3, verses 11 through 12, it says, "Since everything around us is going to be destroyed like this, what holy and godly lives you should live, looking forward to the day of God and hurrying it along. On that day, he will set the heavens on fire, and the elements will melt away in the flames. We know that we will then see the new creation, where righteousness dwells." Verse 13, "Therefore, living in anticipation of Christ's return requires us to lead a life of holiness and constant readiness." The Antichrist spirit arrived. Now, I would like to discuss one of the main outworkings of Satan's kingdom. This opposition manifests itself in what I call the spirit of the Antichrist. This, as we will see, is distinct from the one person called the Antichrist, who in turn is different from the many antichrists that have arisen throughout history. This spirit and these persons are explained in John's teachings. Dear children, the last hour is here. You have heard that the Antichrist is coming, and already many such antichrists have appeared. From this we know that the last hour has come. These people left our churches, but they never really belonged with us. Otherwise, they would have stayed with us. When they left, it proved that they did not belong with us. But you are not like that, for the Holy One has given you his Spirit, and all of you know the truth. So I am writing to you not because you don't know the truth, but because you know the difference between truth and lies. And who is a liar? Anyone who says that Jesus is not the Christ. Anyone who denies the Father and the Son is an Antichrist. Anyone who denies the Son doesn't have the Father either. But anyone who acknowledges the Son as the Father also. 1 John chapter 2, verses 18 through 23. Let me clarify the true meaning of the term Antichrist. The word Christ is from the Greek word Christos, which exactly corresponds to the Hebrew word Mashiach, from which we get Messiah. So when we say Antichrist, that means anti-Messiah. With this, John referred to an individual who has captured the imagination of many people, some who don't even know the Bible. However, many are not knowledgeable about this individual known as the Antichrist. While Jesus was known for his beauty and charisma, the Antichrist's personality and character will be unappealing and unpleasant. Jesus always spoke the truth, while the Antichrist would only utter falsehoods. The Antichrist will look wonderful, be charming and successful. He will be the ultimate winner and appear as an angel of light. In this sense, the Antichrist will be a satanic Messiah instead of the true Messiah, Jesus Christ. In the book of 1 John chapter 2, verse 18, the author mentioned both the Antichrist and many antichrists. According to the text, there is a spirit associated with the Antichrist, and this spirit will eventually lead to the emergence of the Antichrist, who will lead humanity in a rebellion against God during the end times. In other words, though the Word still waits to see the ultimate revelation of the Antichrist, there are little previews of this man and his mission to come. These are the Antichrists with a little a. Though we commonly call this coming world leader the Antichrist, the Bible gives him many names or titles. He is known as the man of lawlessness, the son of perdition. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 3. Don't be fooled what they say. For that day will not come until there is a great rebellion against God and the man of lawlessness is revealed, the one who brings destruction. Further in John's teaching, we read, "By this you know the Spirit of God. Every spirit that confesses that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is from God, and every spirit that does not confess Jesus is not from God. This is the spirit of the Antichrist, which you have heard is coming, and now it is already in the world." Throughout the history of mankind, many antichrists have appeared and been manifested. There is the Antichrist, a particular person. According to Scripture, at the end of this age, a powerful ruler known as the Antichrist will reign over mankind for a brief period. This represents the ultimate manifestation of evil. As we approach the end of the age, the spirit of the Antichrist will become more intense, and we will find ourselves battling against it more frequently. The Spirit works through every Antichrist. Identifying marks of the Spirit. John has given us distinctive signs of the spirit of the Antichrist. These are of great importance. The mark of the Spirit is that it denies that Jesus is the Messiah. As we see in 1 John chapter 2, verse 22, "Who is a liar, but he that denieth that Jesus is the Christ." And then John continues, "He is Antichrist, that denieth the Father and the Son." Remember this, the spirit of the Antichrist does not deny the existence of God. Indeed, the Antichrist will claim to be God's representative, Godhead. The spirit that denies the Messiah has come. It probably believes in the Messiah who will come but denies that the Messiah has already come. The person known as Antichrist. So we see three names for the same being, the Antichrist, the man of lawlessness, and the son of perdition. And we are given one other important name in Revelation 13. This is part of the vision that John had. "Then I saw a beast rising up out of the sea. It had 7 heads and 10 horns, with 10 crowns on its horns. And written on each head were names that blasphemed God. This beast looked like a leopard, but it had the feet of a bear and the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave the beast his own power and throne and great authority. I saw that one of the heads of the beast seemed wounded beyond recovery, but the fatal wound was healed. The whole world marveled at this miracle and gave allegiance to the beast. They worshiped the dragon for giving the beast such power, and they also worshiped the beast. 'Who is as great as the beast?' they exclaimed. 'Who is able to fight against him?'" Revelation chapter 13, verses 1 through 4. Here we see the fourth title, the beast, a person who is going to arise to whom Satan, the dragon, will impart his power. John's vision of a beast rising from the sea. In Revelation 12, John's vision mainly had heaven in view. Now the scene of his vision shifted to the earth, and in his vision, he stood on the sand of the sea. John refers to this creature as a beast, not a dragon, as described in Revelation chapter 12, verse 3. This creature symbolizes someone distinct from Satan, represented by the dragon, Revelation chapter 12, verse 9. Though this beast is distinct from the dragon of Revelation 12, he is still closely identified with him. He is not the dragon, but he is like him, because the dragon also had 7 heads and 10 horns. Why will Satan give his power to that person? Because this will enable that person to gain dominion over the entire human race and convince all mankind to do the one thing Satan most desires, to worship him. His goal has been a long-term project, which he has worked on patiently for many centuries. An image is set up of the beast, and the whole world is commanded to worship it. Throughout history, men have often bowed down to an image of a political ruler. The Antichrist is also called the son of perdition, 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 3, as was Judas. John chapter 17, verse 12, "During my time here, I protected them by the power of the name you gave me. I guarded them so that no one was lost, except the one headed for destruction, as the Scriptures foretold." This world leader is empowered and supported by Satan. Through this man, Satan will express his desire and authority. In this, the beast takes the offer that Jesus refused. Matthew chapter 4, verses 8 through 10. Matthew chapter 4, verses 8 through 10 says, "Next the devil took him to the peak of a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory. 'I will give it all to you,' he said, if you will kneel down and worship me." "Get out of here, Satan," Jesus told him, "for the scriptures say, you must worship the Lord your God and serve only him." The beast's recovery increases his fame and authority. All the world marveled and follows the beast. Twice later, Revelation chapter 13 verse 12 and Revelation chapter 13 verse 14, this recovery is mentioned in connection to the world's worship and devotion to the beast. Revelation 13 verse 12, he exercised all the authority of the first beast, and he required all the earth and its people to worship the first beast, whose fatal wound had been healed. We read the terms, wounded, healed. This is indeed an Antichrist who even imitates Jesus in his death and resurrection. The world will believe this, and it will add tremendously to his fame and power. We then see the authority and popularity of the beast. The power of the beast will astonish the world, leading people to believe he is invincible. According to Daniel, the speaker who has impressive speaking skills will not only use fancy language, but will also speak disrespectfully about God. The Antichrist is described as a man whose appearance was greater than his brothers. Many people will find him highly attractive because of his charm, eloquence, and striking appearance. The Antichrist will progress from being a regional leader to a world leader, a ruthless global tyrant, and finally, a god. The beast's blasphemies. Revelation chapter 13 verses 5 through 6. Then the beast was allowed to speak great blasphemies against God, and he was given authority to do whatever he wanted for 42 months. And he spoke terrible words of blasphemy against God, slandering his name and his dwelling, that is, those who dwell in heaven. Blasphemer may be a more accurate title than Antichrist for this end times dictator. This individual is someone who speaks out against God and opposes everything that God represents, including his name, his dwelling place, and the inhabitants of heaven. Some Roman emperors blasphemed God this way, but they did not fulfill these prophecies, even if they did prefigure their fulfillment. And he was given authority to continue for 42 months. According to biblical prophecy, the beast will be allowed to act without restraint for 42 months, which is equivalent to 3.5 years. The beast makes war against the saints. Revelation chapter 13 verse 7. And the beast was allowed to wage war against God's holy people and to conquer them. And he was given authority to rule over every tribe and people and language and nation. The government of the beast will persecute and extinguish all those who do not bow and worship to the beast. The Antichrist and the Unholy Trinity. What is the Unholy Trinity? The Unholy Trinity's first person and father is Satan. The Antichrist will be the evil Trinity's second member and son. The third part of the Unholy Trinity, the false prophet, will guide the people's worship and acclaim back to the Antichrist. Satan often tries to imitate or counterfeit God's work to make himself seem like God. The so-called Unholy Trinity, as vividly described in Revelation chapter 12 and 13, is no exception. The Holy Trinity is made up of God the Father, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Spirit. Satan, the Antichrist, and the false prophet are their Unholy Trinity counterfeit. The Holy Trinity embodies infinite truth, love, and goodness. However, the Unholy Trinity exhibits the diametrically opposed characteristics of deception, hatred, and pure evil. The world will be completely enthralled by the Antichrist after this wondrous event. They will worship Satan as well as the Antichrist. The Antichrist will not be alone. The false prophet is the final member of the Unholy Trinity, as described in Revelation chapter 13, verses 11 through 18. Revelation chapter 13, verses 11 through 18. Then I saw another beast come out of the earth. He had 2 horns like those of a lamb, but he spoke with the voice of a dragon. He exercised all the authority of the first beast, and he required all the earth and its people to worship the first beast, whose fatal wound had been healed. He did astonishing miracles, even making fire flash down to earth from the sky while everyone was watching. And with all the miracles he was allowed to perform on behalf of the first beast, he deceived all the people who belonged to this world. He ordered the people to make a great statue of the first beast, who was fatally wounded and then came back to life. He was then permitted to give life to the statue so that it could speak. Then the statue of the beast commanded that anyone refusing to worship it must die. He required everyone, small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to be given a mark on the right hand or on the forehead. And no one could buy or sell anything without that mark, which was either the name of the beast or the number representing his name. Wisdom is needed here. Let the one with understanding solve the meaning of the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. His number is 666. This second beast emerges from the earth rather than the sea. Although he appears meek, mild, and benevolent, the horns indicate that he will wield power. Jesus expressly cautioned followers to watch out for false prophets, who may seem innocent but may cause a great deal of damage. Matthew chapter 7, verse 15. Beware of false prophets who come disguised as harmless sheep but are really vicious wolves. According to Revelation chapter 13, verse 13, the false prophet has the ability to perform impressive miracles, including summoning fire from the heavens. He raises an image of the Antichrist for worship, gives the image life, demands that all people worship the image, and executes those who refuse to worship the image. Paul declared that the Antichrist will come with all power. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 9. This man will come to do the work of Satan with counterfeit power and signs and miracles. Revelation chapter 13, verses 14 through 15. And with all the miracles he was allowed to perform on behalf of the first beast, he deceived all the people who belong to this world. He ordered the people to make a great statue of the first beast, who was fatally wounded and then came back to life. He was then permitted to give life to the statue so that it could speak. Then the statue of the beast commanded that anyone refusing to worship it must die. It is said that the false prophet will require all individuals to get a permanent mark, similar to how slaves were marked in the past, to show their complete loyalty to the Antichrist and rejection of God. This mark will be necessary to engage in any business transactions. Accepting the mark results in eternal death. Revelation chapter 14, verse 10. According to the Bible, those who accept the mark are not only accepting an economic system, but also a worship system that rejects Jesus Christ. The number of the beast is revealed in Revelation chapter 13, verses 18. 666. We read of a mark on their right hand or on their foreheads. Satan is not creating a being. All he can do is imitate God. We are not surprised to find that this, too, is a satanic parody of something God will do. It imitates God's mark upon his people. Revelation chapter 7, verses 3 through 4, saying, Do not harm the earth or the sea or the trees until we have sealed the bondservants of our God on their foreheads. And I heard the number of those who were sealed, 144,000, sealed from every tribe of the sons of Israel. Underground bunkers. Does the Bible mention current events such as billionaires building bunkers? If so, does it indicate the fulfillment of end-time prophecies mentioned in the Bible? Explaining the subject involves addressing three complex puzzles. Let's break them down in simpler terms and discuss how they relate. Puzzle 1. The prophecy. Revelation chapter 6, verses 15 through 16. Then the kings of the earth and the eminent people, and the commanders and the wealthy and the strong, and every slave and free person hid themselves in the caves and among the rocks of the mountains. And they said to the mountains and the rocks, Fall on us and hold us from the sight of him who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. The bunkers appear in Revelation 6, and Revelation chapters 6 through 16 covers Satan on earth. This particular segment of the book is the crux, the very heart of the matter, and can be quite challenging to comprehend. Unfortunately, we have now reached the most unpleasant part of the book, the worst judgment. The situation will deteriorate significantly before any improvement can be seen. The scenario depicted in the upcoming chapter is grim. However, it is reassuring to know that the scenario depicted in the book is the worst it can be. The reader can take solace in the fact that things will only get better from here on out. Nevertheless, the upcoming chapters are distressing enough to make one feel uneasy. The bunkers are mentioned as part of prophecy, yet to be fulfilled as they are part of the 7 seals. The 7 seals are part of God's end-of-the-world judgment. Revelation chapter 6 verses 1 through 17 gives us more information. Even though we see the result of the bunkers in Revelation 6, the action begins in chapter 5 of Revelation. On that fateful and dreadful day, a sense of terror and fear would grip people from all walks of life. The apprehension and anxiety would be palpable as they face the unknown and uncertain future that lies ahead. The sheer magnitude of the impending doom would be overwhelming. No authority, nor grandeur, nor riches, nor valor, nor strength would be able to support men at that time. Yea, the very poor slaves who, one would think, had nothing to fear because they had nothing to lose, would be all in amazement at that day. At the time being referred to, no amount of authority, grandeur, riches, valor, or strength would be able to provide support to the people. No bunker or fancy steel cages would feel safe enough. Even those who were considered to have nothing to fear would be filled with a sense of amazement on that day. The situation would be so overwhelming that I would wish for it all to crash. Take a moment to behold the scene before you and note the extent of the fear and amazement displayed by those present. Their reactions are undoubtedly intense and palpable, a testament to the gravity of the situation. In times of this extreme hardship, their emotional state will become so intense that it may lead them to feel as if they are being pushed to their limits. The weight of their problems and troubles may become so unbearable that they may feel as if they have no other choice but to give up. The situation becomes so dire that people are driven to the point of desperation. They even wish for the mountains to fall upon them and the hills to cover them. They would prefer to disappear completely and cease to exist. Also observe the cause of their terror, namely, the angry countenance of him that sits on the throne and the wrath of the Lamb. All individuals are equally humbled by the wrath of God. This judgment is especially profound since it is the wrath of the Lamb. It is the fierce anger of love, the anger of selfless love that has done everything that is possible for our salvation. This anger tells us with absolute certainty that evil will eventually be destroyed by God. They say in their bunkers, "Hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne." People don't just hide from the fear of punishment, but also from the very sight of the Almighty who reigns in heaven. The thing that terrifies sinners the most is not just the thought of dying, but the intimidating and overwhelming presence of God himself. The statement emphasizes the inseparable unity between Christ and God. It suggests that anything that causes displeasure to Christ also causes displeasure to God, as they are one and the same. This implies that the will and intention of Christ and God are identical, and they share a single divine purpose. Although God is invisible, he can make the inhabitants of this world aware of his severe displeasure. Although Christ is often depicted as a gentle lamb, it is important to remember that he is capable of anger, even to the point of wrath. The wrath of the Lamb is extremely terrifying, as if the very one who saves us from God's wrath becomes our enemy, then who will plead for us? Those who fall victim to the wrath of the Redeemer will be without hope. Their fate will be sealed with no chance of redemption. This is the very bottom of hopelessness and despair. Throughout history, it has been observed that individuals are presented with opportunities and periods of grace to make amends for their sins. Similarly, God also has his own day of righteous wrath, a day where all sinners will have to face the consequences of their wrongdoings. This day will be so dreadful that even the bravest sinners will not be able to stand before God. The people of Judea and Jerusalem experienced the terror of this day during their destruction, and it will befall all unrepentant sinners on the day of the final judgment. The anguish, fear, and despair that will be experienced by sinners on that day will be beyond measure. The wrath of the Lamb. In times of trouble, humans will desperately look for shelter and safety wherever they can find it. It is at such moments that the fleeting and temporary nature of human existence becomes evident. The upheaval in the sky is not just an ordinary occurrence, but a warning of a greater terror to come. It is the expression of God's wrath, a terrifying and awe-inspiring force that is beyond human comprehension. The wrath of the Lamb is an unusual phrase that terrified people, used to describe the calamities they experience. It's worth noting that they do not view the Lamb of God, who gave his life for human sin or God, who sent his Son to die as the cause of their calamities. Red heifer prophecy. The complete truth about the red heifer. Many have recently been discussing the red heifer in Israel, and it has resulted in many people thinking that the return of Jesus is near. Why is this? What is the significance of a red heifer in relation to the end times? It is important to understand the significance of a red heifer in the Bible before we explore that question directly. To fulfill the mandates of the Old Testament law, a red heifer was required for the purification of the Israelites from uncleanness. To be more specific, the ashes of a red heifer were required. In Numbers chapter 19, verses 1 through 7, it says, "Then the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, This is the statute of the law which the Lord has commanded, saying, Speak to the sons of Israel that they bring you an unblemished red heifer, in which there is no defect and on which a yoke has never been mounted. And you shall give it to Eleazar, the priest, and it shall be brought outside the camp and be slaughtered in his presence. And Eleazar, the priest, shall take some of its blood with his finger and sprinkle some of its blood toward the front of the tent of meeting 7 times. Then the heifer shall be burned in his sight, its hide, its flesh, and its blood, with its refuse, shall be burned. And the priest shall take cedar wood, hyssop, and scarlet material, and throw it into the midst of the burning heifer. The priest shall then wash his clothes and bathe his body in water, and afterward come into the camp, but the priest will be unclean until evening." Chapter 19 of the Old Testament deals with using the ashes of a red heifer, considered one of the most potent symbols of cleansing. This offering was meant to remove defilement caused by coming in contact with a dead person, particularly in the case of the children of Israel, who had just rebelled against the Lord at Kadesh. As a punishment for their unbelief, they were sent out into the wilderness to die, with over 600,000 people dying in 38 years, equivalent to more than 40 people per day. Given the circumstances, it was nearly impossible to avoid contact with death, which highlights the need for the ashes of the red heifer. Many believe that the appearance of a red heifer today is a sign of the construction of the Third Temple and the return of Christ, as the ashes from a red heifer were necessary for the purification rites held at the temple. According to rabbinic tradition, 9 red heifers have been sacrificed since the time of Moses, but none have been slaughtered since the Second Temple's destruction. According to the teachings of Rabbi Maimonides, the 10th red heifer would be sacrificed by the Messiah himself. The Temple Institute, an organization that advocates for the construction of a third temple, has reported that 5 perfect red heifers from Texas. Many people see the acquisition of a red heifer as the fulfillment of prophecy, as it is a significant step towards building a new temple. According to the Mosaic Law, the red heifer used for sacrifice had to be free of any defects or blemishes, and it should never have borne a yoke. Numbers chapter 19, verse 2. The sacrifice was unique in many ways. It used a female animal. It was performed away from the entrance to the tabernacle, and it was the only sacrifice where the color of the animal was specified. In the futuristic timeline of eschatology, it is believed that a third temple of God will be built in Jerusalem. According to Jesus' prophecy, the temple will be desecrated during the tribulation, and for that to happen, there will need to be a temple in existence. If the builders of the end times temple follow Jewish law, they will require ashes of a red heifer mixed with water for ceremonial cleansing. If a red heifer without any blemish has been found and is in Israel, it could be a significant step toward fulfilling biblical prophecy. Before the rapture occurs, it is not necessary to find a red heifer. Jesus could return at any moment to receive his own. The occurrence of the rapture is not dependent on the existence of any specific cow. Is it necessary to find a red heifer before rebuilding the temple? Temple advocates desire a temple for ceremonial purposes, but animal sacrifices aren't required today. No, Jesus has fulfilled all the requirements of the law, and his sacrifice provides true forgiveness and eternal life. Will there be an end-times temple in Jerusalem? The Bible mentions that some end-of-times events will occur in a temple in Jerusalem. In Daniel chapter 9, verse 27, it says, "And he will confirm a covenant with the many for 1 week, but in the middle of the week he will put a stop to sacrifice and grain offering. And on the wing of abominations will come the one who makes desolate, until a complete destruction, one that is decreed, gushes forth on the one who makes desolate. Matthew chapter 24, verse 15 says, Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation, which was spoken of through Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, let the reader understand. In 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 4, speaking of the Antichrist, it tells us, who opposes and exalts himself so proudly and so insolently above every so-called God or object of worship, so that he actually enters and takes a seat in the temple of God, publicly proclaiming that he himself is God. Upon seeing the temple's construction, we can be sure that the end times are near. Number 5, people are changing. But realize this, that in the last days difficult times will come. 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 1. The word perilous connotates the idea of troubles, difficulty, and stressful situations. This kind of atmosphere will characterize the final days. The word perilous was used in classical Greek, both of dangerous wild animals and of the raging sea. The characteristics of the last days that Paul will describe is not the times, but of the terrible people in those times. We should note what the hardness or danger of this time is in Paul's view to be, not war, not famine or diseases, nor any of the other calamities or ills that befall the body, but the wicked and depraved ways of men. The last days is a broad term in the New Testament, so broad that it could be argued that the last days began with the birth of the church on Pentecost. Though some believe that paying attention to the last days or biblical prophecy is frivolous, we should be able to discern when the last days are, or at least when world situations are like the Bible described they would be in the last days. In Matthew chapter 16, verses 1 through 4, Jesus chastised the religious leaders of his day for failing to understand or refusing to understand the significance of their times. And in the morning, there will be a storm today, for the sky is red and threatening. You know how to discern the appearance of the sky, but are you unable to discern the signs of the times? Matthew chapter 16, verse 3. It is possible that Jesus would have the same rebuke for some Christians today who are unaware of the last days and the return of Jesus Christ. Paul gives a description of the human condition in the last days. For men will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, unloving, unforgiving, slanderers, without self-control, brutal, despisers of good, traitors, headstrong, haughty, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having a form of godliness but denying its power. And from such people, turn away. Men will be lovers of themselves. This is definitely typical of our present age when people are motivated to love themselves. It is no accident that the first of these qualities will be a life that is centered in self. Love of self is the primary sin, from which all others flow. The point a man makes his own will the center of life, divine and human associations are destroyed, and obedience to God and charity to men both become impossible. Lovers of self aptly tops the list because it is the essence of all sin and the source of all other characteristics. The term literally means self-lovers, and it refers to the fact that the natural man's center of gravity is himself rather than God. Men will be lovers of money. The love of money is nothing new, but today individuals have the ability to chase our love of money like never before. Men will be boasters, proud, blasphemers. Boasting, pride, and blasphemy are nothing new, but they appear to be more prevalent than ever today. Boasting and blasphemy each act as if I am the most important person. Each of them say, you don't matter and God does not matter. All that matters is me. Today, boasting, pride, and blasphemy can be found everywhere, especially among our culture's idols. Today, many people become wealthy through calculated boasting, pride, and blasphemy. Men will be unthankful, holy, unloving, unforgiving. These traits have characterized humankind to varying degrees since Adam. These things, according to Paul, will be especially prevalent in the last days. Unloving, translated without natural affection, literally means without family love. According to Paul, The end times will be marked by a growing disregard for normal family love and obligation. Another characteristic is that men will be slanderers. Men have always told hurtful lies about other men. Men will be without self-control. The story of no self-control can be noted across nearly everything today: lust, pills, alcohol, food, work. Whatever we do, we often do it out of control. Men will be brutal. Cruelty and brutality are nothing new in the world. However, Paul wrote under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit that the final days would be marked by a particular brutality. Men will be traitors, headstrong, haughty, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. These features are all about one thing: self. Men are traitors because of self. They are stubborn because of self. They are haughty because of self. And they are lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God because of self. We are not required to choose between pleasure and God. Serving God is the greatest joy. According to Psalm chapter 16, verse 11, "At your right hand are pleasures forevermore." However, we must choose between the love of pleasure and the love of God. Many pleasures will come from living for God, but only if you love God first and refuse to love the pleasures themselves. Having a form of godliness but denying its power. People in our self-obsessed world feel very free to practice a salad bar religion, picking and choosing what they want. They are free to be very spiritual, but they do not feel obligated to be biblical. The power of godliness that men will despise in the last days is the power it should have to guide their lives. Power in the sense of rightful authority. And numerous today reject that God has the power to tell them what to do through His Word. For such people, turn away. The command to avoid people who exhibit the characteristics listed in this list is especially difficult in our current age. People who do the things on this list are not only common today, but they are often cultural heroes as well. Christians have a simple responsibility to turn away not only from these attitudes, but also from those who practice them. Many give little heed to the company they keep, but if we spend time with individuals like this, either personally or by allowing us to entertain us, they will influence us. As Paul noted in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 33, "Do not be deceived. Evil company corrupts good habits. For among them are those who slip into households and captivate weak women weighed down with sins, led on by various impulses." 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 6. Those who creep into households. Paul was aware that such dangers existed in the world during his lifetime, and that they would become even more prevalent in the last days before the return of Jesus Christ. On the other hand, he appeared to be particularly concerned that these would find their way into households. It is one thing for such evil to exist in the world. It is quite another to welcome it into your own home. One ought to examine themselves to determine whether or not they are, in fact, one of the captives referred to by Paul, who are held captive by the influence of this end-times rejection of God and celebration of self. There is one particular way to know. Walk away from any kind of worldly influence and see if there are chains that make your escape difficult. Try going a week without bringing anything that is associated with the spirit of the last days into your home and observing whether or not it is possible for you to break free of the chains that are holding you to those things. Paul also says, led away by various lusts. Clearly, the spirit of the last days appeals to us by arousing various lusts within us. It appeals to our desire to be stimulated, or to have our desires for comfort, wealth, or status satisfied. Always learning and never able to come to the knowledge of the truth. The spirit of the last days has a specific intelligence about it. The high priests of the spirit of the last days know how to make things work and how to lead us away by various lusts. But, despite their skill, marketing brilliance, and knowledge, they never arrive at the truth. Indeed, the spirit of the last days has a problem with the idea of true truth altogether. An example of this sort of corrupt human condition, Jannes and Jambres, who resisted Moses. In 2 Timothy chapter 3, verses 8 through 9. Just as Jannes and Jambres opposed Moses, so these men also opposed the truth, men of depraved mind, worthless in regard to the faith, But they will not make further progress, for their foolishness will be obvious to all, just as was that also of Jannes and Jambres. Jannes and Jambres. Though they are not named in the Exodus account, these two men are the Egyptian magicians who opposed Moses in front of Pharaoh. Jannes and Jambres resisted Moses. They were able to perform true miracles, not mere parlor tricks, but only through the power of darkness, not God's power. Jannes and Jambres could do the same thing that Moses did when he threw down his rod and it turned into a serpent. They could do the same thing he did when he turned water into blood. Jannes and Jambres could summon a plague of frogs in the same way that Moses did. However, they were unable to match God miracle for miracle, and their occult powers were revealed to be inferior to God's power. The ability to perform miracles through the power of darkness, as well as the willingness to accept them as genuine, will characterize the end times. Number 6. Wars and rumors of wars. What will the last days on earth be like? Have you ever paused to wonder about the ultimate fate of our world? What will the last day on earth be like? This video is going to be an exploration of this intriguing and profound question. Prophecies of the end times. The last day on earth has indeed been a subject of fascination and speculation throughout human history. Jesus provided a clear description of the end times, marked by various signs and events, yet emphasized the fundamental uncertainty regarding its exact timing. There are various phenomena that would come before the end. These include false prophets, wars, and rumors of wars, famines, and earthquakes in various places. Matthew chapter 24, verses 4 through 8. These events are often interpreted as the beginning of birth pains, suggesting a period of escalating commotion leading up to the end. Wars and rumors of wars. He mentioned that there would be wars and rumors of wars, but advised not to be alarmed as these things must happen, but the end is still to come. You will hear of wars and rumors of wars, but see to it that you are not alarmed. Such things must happen, but the end is still to come. Matthew chapter 24, verse 6. Some Old Testament stories draw connections to the concept of the end times, as depicted in the New Testament. One such story is the rise and fall of kingdoms in the book of Daniel, particularly in Daniel 2 and 7, where the prophet Daniel interprets dreams and visions that symbolically represent a series of empires and conflicts. King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon had a dream about a statue made of various materials, gold, silver, bronze, iron, and clay, representing different kingdoms. And after you another kingdom will arise inferior to you, then another third kingdom of bronze, which will rule over all the earth. Then there will be a fourth kingdom as strong as iron. Just as iron smashes and crushes everything, so, like iron that crushes, it will smash and crush all these things. Daniel chapter 2 verses 39 through 40.